In this video, we'll be continuing the life of Christ in a harmony of the Gospels. And I'm working on the section, the pericope, where Jesus heals a demon-possessed boy. And we're reading from Mark, Matthew, and Luke. I'm going to start with Mark 9, verses 14 to 29. I'll read it in the Greek, and then translate it into English. Kai elthantes pras tous mathetas edan aklan palun periautus kai grammates sud setuntes pras autus. And when they came to his disciples, they saw a great crowd about them, and the scribes arguing with them. So you have Jesus coming, and there's a great crowd, and the scribes are arguing. And we move then to verse 15. Caiuthus pas aklas idantes auton, exitambestes an kai prastrecantes aspadzanta auton. And immediately all the crowd, seeing him, or when they saw him, were greatly amazed, and they were running up to him, and they were greeting him. So the crowd is coming to greet Jesus, and they want to probably ask him about what they were arguing about. I don't know. But then verse 16 reads, Kai eperotesin autus, ti xu se tete pras autus. And he asked them, saying, what are you discussing with one another? What are you talking about? And here we're going to learn specifically it has to do with the young boy that was demon possessed. Verse 17. Kai epikrithe auto heis ek tu aklu didaskele. Enekatan huyan mu prase ekanta numa alalon. And he answered, or I should say, and they're out of the crowd, it was answered to him, saying, Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he was dumb, having a spirit where he could not speak. In other words, he has a spirit without speech, literally. So a spirit that he cannot speak. And notice in verse 18, he talks about what the spirit does to the boy. Kai hapu an autan, katalabe rese autan, kai afritse, kai fritse tus adantas, kai xerainatai, kai epa toisu hena alta ekbalusin, kai uk iskuan. That is, and wherever it seizes him, that is the spirit, the unclean spirit, it is dashing him down, and he is foaming and grinding his teeth, and he is becoming rigid. And I spoke to your disciples in order that they might cast him out, but they were not able. In other words, I spoke to your disciples that they might cast him out, but they could not. They were not able. So Jesus answered, Ha de apokrithes autois lege, o genea apistas, chaos pate pras humas esamai, chaos pate anexamai humon, verite autan pras me. And notice the answer of Jesus, and he answering them was saying, this is Jesus now talking about what has just happened, and he's using this as an illustration of the unbelief of that generation. So notice he says, "O faithless generation of unbelief, how long am I with you? Or how long shall I be with you? How long am I to bear with you?" In other words, your lack of faith, Jesus says, is troubling. How long do I bear with this? Bring him to me. And so in verse 20, kai ene kan autan pras autan, kai idon autan tanuma euthus sene sparaxen autan, kai pison epites geis ekuliata afitson. And so they brought to him, they brought the boy, they brought him to him, and when he saw, that is, when the Spirit saw him, that is, saw Christ, immediately the Spirit, it conversed the boy. And when he fell upon the ground, or falling upon the ground, he was rolling about, foaming, that is, foaming at the mouth. And then in verse 21, Jesus then addresses the Father. And notice it says, Kai eperotesin ta patera autu, pasas granas estin hos tuta gegonen auto, ha de apen ek paidiathin. And so Jesus asks the Father, how long of a time is this with the boy? And the Father answered, and he said, out of childhood, or from childhood. And verse 22, it continues. He continues to talk about what the demon did. Kai palakis kai es puratan ebalen, kai es hudata hena apalese autan, al e tidune ba ethe san hemon, sprang nistes f hemas. And often it has cast him into the fire. It cast him into the fire and into waters in order to kill him, in order to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have mercy upon us, have pity upon us, and help us. In other words, pity us, and with your pity, help us. We need help. And before Jesus can help any of us, we need to admit that we need help.
Amen.
And this is a clear example. We all have different issues. No one is perfect. And we need to come to Jesus and say, help us, Lord. So then we move on to verse 23. Ha de Jesus epen auto, te edune panta dunata to pistuanti. And notice Jesus' answer. And Jesus said to him, if you are able, or if you can, then all things are possible to the one who believes. Notice Jesus is calling him to believe, and that all things can come through belief. Jesus is focusing on here the need of belief in him. Notice then in verse 24, Iuthus kraxas ha pater tu paidiu elegen pistuo baethe mu te apastia. Immediately, the father of the child cried out, or when he cried out, he was saying, I believe. Help my unbelief. You know, I think we all go through that. Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. I need your help. I need your assistance. And we all do. And Jesus is the one we need to go to and cry out to him, whatever the issue might be. And we also pray, Lord, help our unbelief. Help us to believe. So notice verse 25 then. Edon decha Jesus hate episun treke aklas epitimesin to pneumati to akatharto legon auto ta alelan kai kafanuma ego epitaso soi excelse ex autu kai meketi excelses eis auton. When Jesus saw that a crowd was running together to him, or come running together, he then rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to him, unclean spirit, I am commanding you, come out of him and no longer enter into him. Notice Jesus has power over the unclean spirit, and he is telling the unclean spirit to come out of him and no longer enter into him. The unclean spirit had been trying to kill the boy by throwing him into the fire, throwing him into the water, and so forth. Jesus comes to bring final healing. And that's true in all of our life. Satan attacks us all the time, and his demons. And he is really wants to bring destruction, but Jesus wants to bring life. And so we move to verse 26. Kai kraxas kai pala sparaxas excelsen, kai ageneta hose necras, hostetus palus legen hate apesthenin. Notice here, but Jesus, after he cried out, and when he was convulsing, or when he had convulsed, that is the boy, he came out, and the boy became like he was dead, like a corpse, so that most of them said he has died, or he died. But Jesus, notice, he died to the old thing that the demon was doing. But notice Jesus then answered or grasped him in verse 29. Ha de Jesus kratesas tes keras autu egerin autan kai aneste. And notice Jesus then, when he took him by the hand, or seized him by the hand, raised him up, and he arose. What a beautiful summary there. Jesus raised him up, and he brought him to health again. And that's what the Lord wants to do to everyone who puts their faith in him. But notice Jesus then, the disciples wanted to know, why weren't we able to do this? Notice verse 28. Kaya silthan tes autu, es oekan hoimase tai autu, kai edian eperoton auton. Hate hemes uk edunethek men ekbalen autan. Notice, and when he had entered the house, his disciples then wanted to know privately why they couldn't do it. So his disciples asked him privately, why were we not able to cast it out? Why couldn't we do it? And notice the reply of Jesus. Kaie penautois tutatagenas in udeni dunatai exelthen eme in prasuche. That is, and he said to them, this kind is not able to come out except but by prayer. This kind cannot be driven out at all except in prayer. So the most important thing for victory over Satan's attack, Jesus says, is prayer, and coming to him, who is the one who delivers all through his empowerment as we come to him as Savior, and then on a daily basis coming to him in prayer for help during the onslaughts of Satan and the demons.